that may lead to growth and understanding. So let us look for the strength to love, to risk and not to fear our missteps, to rethink, to live humbly with our God, to open always be to the possibilities that love will make a way, a path through our doubt and uncertainty. For now abides faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. And my friends, of this we can be certain. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Campbell. As is the tradition in the Turner Lecture, we now have time for a few questions. Now is a great time for you to ask your question.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Dr. Campbell, I've lived in the Midwest and West and am quite acquainted with Chautauqua and have been there several times, but I'm afraid many people in Virginia are not aware of what it does, what it is, and I think you should take a few minutes to tell what you're doing there now.
Well, Chautauqua is a historic institution. It was founded by a Methodist minister, or Methodist bishop actually, and an inventor, a layperson. And their dream 138 years ago now was that we should perfect the teaching of Sunday school. They believed that the future of the church was bound up with what children learn in Sunday school. I might say, having been a Sunday school teacher for many years, I think that's not a bad thing to think about all over again. But the fact of the matter is, these two men, I think, said something quite profound. They said, we want to develop a place where we are committed to lifelong learning for everybody. And they said, the developed human being will have in their life religion, art, recreation, I think there's one more, why can't I remember? Art, recreation, I'll come to it. There are four things, and they're the same four things that people now, the great gurus, have come up with and said, this is what makes a whole person. And I think the amazing thing is that along with the art and religion, they added recreation. They felt it was important. Well, of course, what was the other one was education. So those four things. And Chautauqua has really built its life on this. And so for those who have never been there, I would ask you to come. You can look at the website. You can see what's happening this summer. And it is a rich mix of wonderful art, plays that will challenge you and please you. Or Chautauqua has its own orchestra, its own ballet company, its own theater company, and the best preachers in the country, I do believe. We are privileged to, when we look out at that congregation, and there's 3,500 people out there, I always say to myself, where 2 or 3 are gathered, there I am also. But 3,500 is a lot more fun. I mean, it's quite something to look out at this large group of people. And for me personally, it has been my first time, you will hear this, to be a pastor. It's not like you didn't pastor the National Council of Churches. They desperately needed it. But to become a pastor to the people that are there, because even though they're there for a 9-week summer season, for many of them, they've stopped going to church. And for whatever reason, they go at Chautauqua. I could go on about that, but I'm not going to take time to do it. But I think the richness of it really is what happens there, and it's the mix of things that you, and what I love the most is I rediscovered Chautauqua. My grandmother took me there when I was a little girl. And then for years, I didn't go back. And then I was asked to come and preach when it was 1985. And I came back and I said, this is a wonderful place. I'm going to come and bring my children. And so all of my grandchildren, all 8 of them, have been to Chautauqua since they were born. And they have come the whole time, and it has become for us a wonderful place for the whole family, because people can go off and do what they want to do and somebody else wants to do something else. And as the one who had the opportunity really to be the pastor to Chautauqua, it has been an amazing experience. I just wore myself out before I came that I'm finishing a book of the prayers that I did for the 14 years that I was there. And they're about to be published. So if anybody's written a book, you know what it's like when the publisher's waiting. And it'll be published by the United Church of Christ. And so I'll tell you a secret. When I knew I was going to have to say something for the communion service, I was going through the book of prayers and I said, ooh, that's a good one. I said to the publisher, I said, can I just take that one? And she said, you're still not there, are you? You can take it. You can take it whenever you want. We have it on the computer. It's there. And so, but one of the important things for me, and it is about the ecumenical life of faith, what I realized was that the congregation was an ecumenical congregation, and no prayer book from any one single denomination was probably going to meet the need. And so it inspired me to try to take my own ecumenical background and out of that to try to prepare for the people prayers that would in fact serve the really large number of people from different denominations and different histories that were there. So that's a long answer to a short question, but you can go to the website and find out all about it. Yes?
I have heard you challenge us to move from certainty to ambiguity, but it seems to me that creates a certain vulnerability, or perhaps we might even say fear. So my question to you is, how do we create an environment or a climate where people feel safe to express those ambiguities?
I think the answer is we're not going to. We could create a climate where people more easily live with ambiguity. Now, ambiguity has its downside, because to believe, there's nothing wrong with being a fervent believer. But to be I'll give you an example. We have a little group in Chautauqua. Are you filming this?
Yes. I can stop it now if you'd like.
Do that, because it's a great story.
I went to Chicago with my mother and my nieces for the first time in August, and we had a wonderful time. My 10-year-old nieces had fun. But my question is, as you've seen the church, big church, mainline church change over the course of time, what do you see as where the mainline church is headed? We hear all the time about the decline, and in the disciples we have this 2020 vision of trying to end the decline. But do you have a sense, if you were to cast out 20, 30 years, what you think the mainline church will look like?
Partly I'm going to talk about some of that tomorrow, and what I want to talk about in the lecture tomorrow is what I think is happening ecumenically. I mean, I think that our churches are now ecumenical. And part of this, I'm very aware of, having been at Chautauqua, and I thought, well, this is not just Chautauqua. And I might tell the story tomorrow, so don't stay away just because you've heard the story. But when I was General Secretary, we always had the heads of our communions. There were 37 communions, members of the National Council. Everything from the Swedenborgians to all of the historic black churches, the Orthodox churches, the Quakers, I mean, in addition to the mainline churches that we know about. And I think that one of the things that I think is happening is pastors get trained in in denominational seminaries. Then they go to a church. And if they were to ask, how many people in this room are cradle disciples? My guess would be, it would be lucky if 1/4 of the congregation were disciples. If you go to a baptism, you can test this out. You go to a baptism in any one of the mainline churches, and if you have 5 people present, grandparents, people standing up with them, whatever, you are going to have 5 denominations represented in the baptism of that baby, including probably a Roman Catholic. And so I believe the future is that our churches will become the base of the ecumenical movement. Churches themselves will become ecumenical, and they will wrestle with each other. And finally, seminaries will have to help train pastors to deal with congregations that are no longer tied only to the denomination with the name on the door. And I think if we move the ecumenical movement out of its lofty national status and seated it in the life of congregations, we would be doing something quite amazing. So, you don't have to come tomorrow. Yes?
You spoke this noon about pastors today being younger rather than not too many years ago when they were more middle age. Why do you think that's happening?
I wish I knew. You wanted to help us with it. I mean, when we have it at Chautauqua, a new clergy group, and if anybody doesn't know about this, and you know new clergy, and we use the word new carefully, not young, and we got a wonderful person at Chautauqua who gave us some money to, every year we have 2 weeks where we invite 12 to 15 pastors who have been in ministry for 7 years or less. And the whole purpose of it is to see what can they say to each other, what are they looking for, and the theory is that in the first, now I guess they're saying the first 5 years of ministry is when people give up on it. And if they can stick it out for a little longer, they're more likely to commit themselves to a lifetime of ministry. And so I think there's what we've seen in that program, in the beginning, we had all middle-aged people, and particularly the women who didn't have a chance to be pastors. And so they became, like I did when I was 50, they became ordained at 50. That, I think, has now changed, and younger women can be pastors, and they are in our seminaries, and they are new pastors. And so, for some reason, the dynamics of the groups have begun to change. We still have midlife people who are making a changeover, but we have more that are younger. And I don't know if you could explain it more than I can. I mean, it takes a generation of, that is actually in the middle of it to know. Yeah.
Perhaps you're talking about the churches today have become, the Christian churches referred to, more ecumenical. I think that if the mainline churches are going to survive, they're going to have to become even more ecumenical, meaning they're going to have to start accommodating, in essence, non-believers. I mean, I think that there's a real desire on the part of many people who profess to be atheists or non-believers for many of the things that the churches do, not just baptisms and weddings, but the actual ethical things that they do. And if I had to predict, that's what I would predict would happen, that some of the churches anyway will figure out a way to accommodate that sort of ecumenism and
I agree.
move forward.
We have a lot of pressure right now at Chautauqua, and I'd be interested in people's reaction to this. We changed the name of the department from the Department of Religion to the Department of Faith and Spiritual Life, because the word religion itself, especially for a younger generation, is like, or people who have given up on the church, have had bad experiences, and really don't want anything to do with religion. And yet, you bring them to our services on Sunday morning, and they like them, and they come back. But I think you're right. And a number of the people that come to our lectures, the religion lectures, are atheists. And they will be very quick to say, we're atheists because we don't want to be the other. I mean, they're not even sure, they're not dyed-in-the-wool atheists. It's simply they don't want religion as they have experienced it. And so I think you're right, that part of the beginning to rebuild, to me it's amazing that in a place like Chautauqua we get so many people, because they're the same people that are in your towns and go to your Rotary, I mean, and why do they come up there? I mean, it's hard for me to even figure out, why do they come to church when they're on vacation, of all things. I mean, where they could be swimming. I think that myself sometimes. Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Oh, we are so thankful for John Turner, and we are so thankful for Pete Warren, and now we are so thankful for Joan. Joan Campbell will be downstairs following our closing prayer, and I hope that all of us will go down and greet her and have a cup of tea or whatever it is, and we will look forward to continuing our conversation. Could you stand now for the closing prayer?
I'll share one out of the book. Gracious God, we confess what seems always to be with us. Broken things within us that never seem to mend. Empty places within us that seem always to ache. Things like buds within us that never seem to flower. So God of love and grace, help us to accept ourselves. Lead us to do those good and true things that are not compromised by anything within us. And as much as it can be, gracious and loving God, mend us and fill us and make us whole.